because I tried to just get everything I've ever felt in the world in that moment. So it was hard. I listened to a lot of music and thought about all the great and terrible things that have ever happened to anyone. And and then I went on set, and I stared at such a jerk, and I forget her name.
Patty Hasty.
Patty. I stared at her and looking at her, I was so moved by this woman. She was like a prop, but she was real, and that's, I guess, what it's like when you're staring at someone in a coma. It was so moving to see her there and how hard she had to work to be that character, and yeah, it was just a lot of things that led to that scene.
Patty, did you tell her about Pat? Tell me about Patty for a second, because it's interesting.
She's amazing.
Yeah, Patty, she'll be there at the screening tonight.
Oh, good.
The woman who plays the wife in the coma, local hire in Hawaii, and took it very, very seriously. She lost a lot of weight preparing for the part, and then to come into work every day, she would stay up all night, come to work, go through hair and makeup, get into bed, get hooked up to the machines, take a melatonin, and tell us, don't even wake me for lunch.
Oh my God. Which is a crime in my book.
Yeah. Sometimes I would see her like standing up in the corner and it was so freaky to see her like walking around ever, like when we were done shooting and she'd be like walking to her trailer. I was like, whoa, it worked. She's alive. But it didn't. Anyway.
Robert?
What was the question?
Oh, any memorable or goofy moment you can remember? Just a significant moment from the shoot. How was
The shoot
your
was great. I was there twice in Hawaii. It was a great time, and I almost worked with George once in a military thing, but I didn't. But when I did, and this is true, you got the best set that I've ever worked on. Warmest and funniest, and with more jokes, and Quentin's set was good too. But you gave it the personal touch. Everybody had fun, and that's a big plus. When I first got a call from my agent who said, "Would you do one scene in a picture?" I said, "Sure." Now, I have had low points in my career when 4 kids, when any job of any kind, one scene or not, was good. But then when I met with Alexander and he said, "Oh no, it's 2 scenes," listen, double. So all I can say is that it was beautifully written stuff, and it was easy to play, and I got to smack my friend Nick.
Yeah, that was a fun day, wasn't it?
Wasn't it?
About 20 takes on that one, right? Nick and Matthew, I'd love to hear from you too. Just any particular thoughts or memories about your experience on the picture?
Well, I mean, getting punched in the face by Robert Forster was one of the more memorable things, definitely. But as he said, it was really not even just the process of filming it. It was being in a group of really great people who were having a lot of fun doing what they did best and learning so much from all of them. For me, it was a crash course. I had not had that type of experience before. So to be immersed in it for so long, learning so much was amazing, really amazing.
And you got an opportunity. I mean, you see that character for quite a while being kind of a doofus and kind of out of it and stuff, and then you get that one scene with George in the middle of the night that's so revelatory and so touching. That must have been a very special scene to play, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it was pretty frightening to go into that. I didn't want to mess up, but once I got there, yeah, that was a really cool scene to film, Really, really great.
Matthew, anything you can contribute?
Yeah, I have the greatest role in the history of films. Yeah. I steal George Clooney's wife. And there's Rocky and Lawrence of Arabia, and then there's Brian Spear. Never to be duplicated ever again. I literally just looked at him all day, just thought, I'm better than you. You're not that handsome. I know all your secrets. I'm a piece of ass. No, it was great. Look, of those times in your life that Robert's talking about. Like, I've done a lot of movies, and to come back and do a movie, I've been gone for a long time, and to do the greatest movie that I will probably ever be involved in, to be a part of something that's an instant classic, and to be with one of the greatest filmmakers in America and the world right now is like, it changes your life. And it changes your perspective on the work and your career, and it gives you something to be proud of, and that doesn't happen very often in the business that we're in right now. It's really difficult to be an actor. And to have an opportunity to work with this cast and that crew and that director and the writing is just a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, to be honest.
Wonderful. Well, on that note, we can open it up for a few questions from the group here. You had your hand up first.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for this wonderful show. Mr. Clooney, so much depends on your relationship with your daughters, and I would love to know what, from yourself and from the two young ladies, what was the process of sort of coming together as a family? Did you do any sort of bonding exercises?
Yes, we did bonding exercises. I would say, you guys stay over there and don't talk to me. No, Alexander has a really, it's a process that I very much embrace in the rehearsal process, which is, we go over the scenes a little bit, but mostly it's about spending time with one another. Because the truth of the matter is, once you get to a set, everything is so different. We could sit here and work out the hospital scene, but all of a sudden you're in, just the blocking alone is different. The Patty Lane there is different. Everything changes so drastically when you finally get to do that the rehearsal process in general is about trusting one another. And so a big part of it was just getting to know the gang and all of us getting the ability to feel comfortable enough to give each other shit. Go like this. Shit. But there's some truth in that, and once you can get to that place, it's easy. And so the lucky thing is that they're all such talented actors, but we got a really good script and a really good director, and that sort of protects everything else. So that was the process.
And if I can ask the young ladies what it was like to bond with George.
No, you can't.
Take this one. Okay. Well, it was actually really easy for us to. Well, me and Shay were just best friends. We would hang out on weekends, and we would always be together on set. And same thing with George. Not on weekends. I don't know where he was.
Never on weekends.
No daddy
This is a
time.
job, remember?
But yeah, almost every second on set, we were with Shay and George and Nick, and everyone was just so tight, so together. Like, it was really like a family.
A lot of people always ask, oh, what was it? Weren't you intimidated working with George? And the first time I ever met him, he came up to me and he gave me a big hug and he said, welcome, sweetie. And that was at the table read before we even started filming. And from that moment on, there was no intimidation factor. There was nothing but just a really good guy and a really great human to look up to and learn from.
Wow.
For Alexander Payne, for someone who dresses as well as you do, you really managed to put George Clooney into the ugliest pants I think I have ever
Were my
seen. So my question is about the hibiscus flower overload, what you were doing with the costumes, and how did you work with the costume designer, and how did it feel to wear those
Amara?
pants?
Cover your ears. I remember when we did the costume test the first day and camera test, George came out in his outfit with the Aloha shirt tucked into his khaki pants, and he looked at me and says, I'm never going to get laid again. I said, I don't believe you. I think the way the costuming is in the film is fairly accurate to what you see when you're in Hawaii. Have you ever been out there? That's pretty much how it's pretty much what you see is a big floral cacophony. And the costume designer had a pretty good eye in replicating what she saw, and it caused some consternation for the DP, who saw all this clash of color in his frame, and he said, well, then he just had to go with it. That's sort of what it is.
I wore a T-shirt in one of the scenes I did that I had silk screened like probably 10 years before, right there in Honolulu. Yeah.
Here.
Oh, what?
I'm sorry.
The pants wearing the costume?
Well, I'm not completely against khakis. It's just the level you have to wear them at, and it's the higher you pull them, sort of the more excruciating it is, if you can imagine. But no, this whole process was just about schlubbing up a little bit, and this seemed kind of easy for me. I grew up in Kentucky. This is standard, just different color shirts. But,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Payne, can you talk a little bit about the use of voiceover, which in old Hollywood films was relatively common, but we don't see it used. Voiceover is used effectively today, and in this film, it for this viewer really worked.
Thank you. Well, I'm a big fan of voiceover, and I've had it before in Election and About Schmidt. And I did a short in Paris a few years ago, a voiceover film. I did a TV pilot a couple years ago, which was also a voiceover TV pilot. I'm a big voiceover fan.
What is the voiceover, the significance of you as a writer and director?
Well, it's maybe different in every case, but in general it helps. Well, two things. I very much like first-person literature, and I like first-person cinema, and entering a story through, more or less, through the eyes of the protagonist, and using devices of subjectivity, not just voiceover, but visually as well. And it's also, it can just help propel the narrative a bit. I think the first reel of this film is slightly too voiceover heavy. There was a lot of exposition I had to get across to the audience, and I was aware of it, but the audience had to know all that stuff, and I didn't want to waste time in a scene to have to get that information across. So I did have to rely on voiceover, but it also anchors us. Even though it disappears, the voiceover tapers off and disappears by about reel 3. But I wanted to anchor the audience very much into Matt King, into his voice and into his head, because sometimes he's sort of speaking in that kind of omniscient way, but other times it's his thoughts. It's actually the first time I've ever used voiceover as with someone's thoughts.
Over here.
For Alexander, just wondering, I read the book. I haven't seen the film yet. I'll see it tonight. But can you talk about your process a bit with the author and how you guys work together in reading the script?
She's asking about collaboration with the author and adaptation in this case. This was about my third adaptation, third or fourth, and it's the closest I've ever worked with. In fact, I've never worked with the writer ever before. Sideways came closest. I had him give Jim Taylor and me a tour of wine country, to see it through his eyes, because that was very much autobiographical to him. And then I had little to do with him during adaptation. But I would really consider Cowie Hemmings, that's the writer's name, my collaborator on this, unspoken collaborator, because it's her world, not mine. And to enter that world of that kind of upper class world in Honolulu and in Hawaii, it's something kind of specific, small, and a little complicated. So I had to take a lot of cues from her. Turns of phrase. I mean, for example, when in the scene between George and Judy on the beach, and she says, "Do you live here?" And he says, "No, on Oahu." And she says, "Oh, so do we." I had originally put in, "No, in Honolulu," which you don't say in Hawaii. You really refer more to the island than to the city on the island, even if it's a big city like Honolulu. So it could be little terms of phrase like that, or mores in that Outrigger Canoe Club set. So I really relied upon her a lot.
Sir.
With that in mind, George, having shot in familiar turf of northern Kentucky and Cincinnati,
Right.
How was it to compare and contrast the experience of working in a familiar area as, compare and contrast working in a familiar area as our hometown of Cincinnati,
Right.
and going to a place where the locations figure so much as a personality to the film and working with that?
Well, most of the time I'm working in places I'm not familiar with. Sometimes that's, Slovakia, and then sometimes it's Hawaii. And not to bash on Slovakia, but I really did enjoy Hawaii, as you can imagine. I mean, I think everybody will agree. It's a great script, great director, and you're shooting in Hawaii. There really is there's no downside to this, it was fun for me. I haven't spent much time there, and certainly not in Oahu, Honolulu. But I hadn't spent much time there, so it was fun to see. It's a very, it's such an island. It really is an island. I don't know if any of you have spent time there, but on the freeway, the speed limit is like 45 miles an hour, and it takes you a while to get into that rhythm. So I'm driving behind people, and I'm like, move it! And they're like, hey. Like I was an alien, because I wanted to go 50 miles an hour. But that's just my problem, and and eventually you got into their rhythm, and so that was fun. I really enjoyed it there a lot.
How was it different shooting there versus being in your hometown?
Well, I didn't have relatives on the set every day. When you're shooting in your hometown, you've never met so many cousins. I mean, really, they're like, "This is your cousin." I'm like, I have no idea who that is, but they're like, "Okay, you're my cousin." I didn't have a whole of that in Hawaii. Not a lot of it. It was fun though.
Your character.
Yes, he did.
Just two more, you and then you.
Hi, Josh. Sorry, take the So I'm sure that George Clooney in real life will never be cheated on by a woman. So how did you get into the feeling?
Just keep him away from her.
And what would you do if it ever happens to you?
Good. There's a question that'll come back. Matthew, you answer it. What'll I do?
He'll do that thing. He'll be a punk.
Sir.
No, I did. I let him answer. Because I know how any answer will read.
Yes, sir.
First of all, congratulations to everyone. It seems to me at the crux of the film is notions of. Thank you. At the crux of the film, notions of forgiveness, and some people out there say certain things are so that someone has done is so awful they can't be forgiven, and there are other people say, well, anything ultimately has to be forgiven to show your humanity, blah, blah, blah. I personally think it's some grayer, more complicated area in between. I was curious what Mr. Clooney and Mr. Payne's thoughts were about forgiveness, both in the context and the world of the film, and also if you would be willing to talk about that too in real life.
Wow. Now I don't forgive you. I take it back. I thought in the film that you're absolutely right. There's a big part of it. It's forgiving yourself as much in this film, because so much of this that happened was also his responsibility, and I think that a big part of that release at the end when he's with his wife is, and he looks at her and he kisses her goodbye, is understanding his part in this as well. Yes, she cheated on him, but he was not there, and he was not a good father, and he was, as much as he thought he was. He was busy working, and that happens, And so there's part of it was coming to understand that, and I think that forgiving yourself is a very big part of that. And I think that that's true. I think we all go through those experiences of understanding that the older you get, the more forgiving you are of other people's mistakes. When you're young, you find that anything that that stands against something you believe in is just plain wrong. I remember there would be relatives of mine who would say something, and I would be like, well, he's a bigot, or and then you come to find out later that I was way too judgmental of those sort of things. I was creating, I was making the issue much bigger than it was. And I think as we all get older, we get a little more forgiving of everything except the guy driving 45 miles an hour, which I'm just not worried about. In general, here.
Well, I think what I said at the beginning of this discussion about the two acts of love when it's difficult that interested me in making this film on some level, I think those are also, it's love and forgiveness. Having to rise above the occasion and forgive and deal with also the murderousness inside of one, but overcome that, because I think forgiveness is difficult. Forgiving self may be, for many people, at least for myself, extremely difficult. And then about in a larger context, I will say I am constantly astonished by those who pray daily, forgive me my sins as I forgive those who sin against me, and beat very loudly the war drum.
Thank you.
Well, we do have to wrap up. I just want to thank everyone here for such wonderful work. I wish we had films like this every year, but it rarely comes along. And thank you for coming out today, and thank you.
Thank you, everybody.